Hello, friends, and welcome back to College Football Game Day Live. I'm your host, Thor Nystrom, joined as always by my co-host, Mike Farrell of Mike Farrell Sports. Mike, we just had a crazy night of college football. We have 8 more conference championship games today. We had the plate set for us pretty well with that Pac-12 title game last night. But for the next 90 minutes, Mike and I are going to be giving our best bets on today's card and taking all your questions. We're going to get through all 8 conference title games as we go. So if you can center those questions towards the prop market, towards exotic bets, anything outside of the regular handicap of the side of those games in the total, let's do that. And we'll hit as many as we can and give out as many prop takes as we can. Subscribers can ask questions in the chat below. So hit subscribe beneath us and get to type in. We only ask one other favor, that thumbs up right beneath our faces. Hit the thumbs up on that. Helps us get the word out that we're doing it. We appreciate it if you would. Mike Farrell, busy dance card today, so let's get right into it. Let's start with the MAC championship where Toledo, this is interesting. This line has now dropped to 7 as of this morning. It opened closer to double digits. I think it was 8.5 for most of the week. Then it toggled 8. Then it toggled to 7.5 where it was for the last couple days. This morning it has dropped to 7. Toledo laying 7 in Detroit, Ford Field against Miami of Ohio. Total of this game, 43.5 in what's expected to be a low-scoring game. But how do you see it, Mike Farrell?
Yeah, low-scoring game, but I'm going over.
Oh.
The first game was a very close matchup. I think the total was, let me do the math, like 38. So the over here is 43.5. The line is horrible. I mean, 7 points. You might as well throw a hook on here for Miami of Ohio. I think Toledo wins this football game. I don't know if they win by 7. I think it's going to be a little higher scoring than people think. And I know the pace of the game, one side versus the other side, and there's a lot of elements here that could lead to a lower scoring game. But that being said, what we saw last night and what we're going to see in these conference championships games is tendencies are going to be, I don't know, tendencies are going to be tendencies, but teams are going to come out and try to look different. They're going to try to mix things up. They're going to try to change things up. What we saw last night, Washington, playing strong in the line of scrimmage, short passing game, running game, dominating Oregon in the trenches and sort of, putting their will on Oregon. And that wasn't what was expected. That's supposed to be a shootout. I kind of backed off the over because I started thinking to myself, coaches are planning for these games. They've played these teams before. So they're going to change things up. That being said, I think this is going to be a little bit of a different game plan for both of these teams. I've got Toledo. I'm not taking that side because I don't like the 7. I'm going to go over.
It's interesting where these lines have moved, as we get here to game day. Now they're right where my system is. So I have Toledo minus 7.1. The line's now 7. My system's total on the game, 43.9. It's dropped down to 43.5. So it's hard for me to denote any value on either side. Especially with the handicap, you can take this thing both ways. The way that Miami plays, I made the joke a couple times this week. They're like the Iowa, the G5. They have a really good defense, maybe even the G5's best defense. I think it's 15th overall in SP plus. They also have a really good special teams. And they just play super duper slow on offense. They know they don't got it on offense, especially since Gabber went down with the season-ending injury. They have in the Avion Smith kid that scrambles around, not a good thrower. In this game, they're going up against an elite pass defense in Toledo. So my first prop angle today is the under on Avion Smith's passing yards, which I'm seeing 156.5. I would go under that. Miami, like I said, the run-heavy system that they use, it's going into Toledo's relative defensive weakness. Toledo is not as good defending the run as the pass, but Toledo does have a pretty solid run defense. With Avion Smith under center, Miami's highest scoring game, the last 3 since he came in, he started these 3 games in November. The total of the game, the highest one was 33 when they beat Buffalo 23-10. Now, Avion Smith played 3 really bad MAC teams. This is a different proposition, Mike, to your point, and that could manifest in a little bit different strategies. I don't know if it will on the Miami side, but Toledo is for sure going to try to pull Miami out of what they do because you don't want to play Miami's game in this. Toledo's offense super run heavy as well. Daquan Finn is a scrambler as well. The issue for Toledo here, I think, their offense at least, is Miami's run defense is arguably the best in the G5. They have just a fabulous run defense. Penny Boone gets all these touches. I think Penny Boone is going to get held beneath 100 yards here. So I'm on the under of his in the prop market. Penny Boone is currently 109.5. I think that's come down a little bit. So I would go the under on that. Miami's run defense, 38th in success rate, number 7 in explosion against the run. This is going to be a super low tempo game, as Mike was mentioning. Miami runs the slowest tempo in the nation. Toledo is faster than that, but only relatively so. I lean under in this game. That would be my angle with the number at 7. I just don't know how you denote value. It's the objectively fair line. My system, like I said, is right around where the total is as well, but I would lean under just because of the game script, the way I expect that to go with the pace. Mike, the next one is a game that I feel a lot stronger about. We'll see what you think, but the Big 12 championship, Texas, which opened at 11.5 on Sunday. It got to 12.5 pretty quick on Sunday. I was banging the table for a Texas play on the Sunday live show. That thing is now all the way up to 15. It was at 15.5 for just a hot minute. Maybe there was a slight buyback in the market on Oklahoma State at that number, but it looks like we settled in at Texas by 15. We got a total in this one that keeps coming up as well, which is kind of interesting, 56.5. What do you like in this game, Mike?
I like Texas. I mean, I kept trying to think of ways where I would like Oklahoma State, simply because Oklahoma State has a chance to send Oklahoma out, as they did in Bedlam, and Texas out. And Gundy would nothing more than to send both of those teams out with a loss. And he's a good coach. He's an excellent game planner, but he doesn't have the horses to stay in this game. This is going to be a game where Alan Bowman would have to throw the ball and throw the ball successfully, because Texas is very good up front against the run. They're going to crowd the box. They're going to say, okay, Bowman, have at it. Bowman the showman, do your thing, because we're not afraid of you whatsoever. And we're going to keep that running game in check. And that's going to lead to some problems. It's going to lead to some short fields. Texas is going to have field position. And I think this game could get out of hand. So I'm taking Texas to cover the 15. I got it earlier in the week when it was lower. I had leaned over because I think they're going to really blow them out. Now, part of me is kind of rooting for Oklahoma State to pull the upset here. No offense to Texas, but it would be kind of neat to have that storyline of, Oklahoma and Texas leaving the Big 12 for the SEC, and both of them being handed a loss by the mullet man. But it's not going to happen. Take Texas, lay the 15.
I agree with all that. Yeah, it would be a cool story, but I don't like Oklahoma State's odds. And that's despite knowing Mike Gundy has, over the course of his career, been pretty good in these spots as a double-digit dog, in like a marquee game. The matchup here is so rancid for Oklahoma State. This is the worst kind of team they could have drawn. A good matchup of a good team for Oklahoma State, we already saw that. It was when they played Oklahoma. Now, they did win that game. It was by far their marquee win of the season. They won it by a field goal with a post-game expectancy of 34, 36, 30, I'm sorry, 38. I was in the range. But, basically came out on the right side of a coin flip of a game arguably they shouldn't have won. Oklahoma State's been playing over their head. They're 9-3 against the number 55 SP plus strength of schedule. They've gotten to play this paper-like schedule because in the Big 12, they avoided Texas. They avoided a couple of the other good teams. The only one that they had to get paired up against was Oklahoma. Oklahoma State, they got all the newcomers into the Big 12, sort of the bottom feeder to the BYUs, the Cincinnati's, et cetera, and we're able to sort of fatten up on that. The way that Oklahoma State, their strength, they're really their only sort of standout team strength, it's their run game with Ollie Gordon. They're number 1 in the nation in explosive running. Ollie Gordon has 1,580 yards and 20 touchdowns. But Mike, like you mentioned, Texas has the best defensive front in the nation. And it's not just their starting defensive line. Texas's backup defensive line would start on most rosters around the FBS. So they can just bring in waves of guys. They're never tired. They shut down opposing running games. Every single one that they face. Ollie Gordon, you're not going to erase him totally Probably, although UCF is raising their hand right now and saying we did. And Mike Gundy is saying in early September, I erased him with his stupid running back rotation back then. But Ollie Gordon, since then, he's been getting the 25 carries per game, close to 30 touches per game. He's got to be close to, I don't know if I'd say wearing out, but like at this point with the touch threshold, you're closing in on 300. And again, this is the worst matchup that they could possibly get. And once Texas gets ahead by double digits, you got to go to Alan Bowman, Mike. Like you were mentioning, Alan Bowman, 10 to 11 TDI and T ratio this year, under 60% completions, zero rushing utility. So he's also a sitting duck back there in the pocket. Oklahoma State only 7.5 second order wins compared to their 9 wins. I think against that mediocre strength of schedule, it shows you that they're a bit inflated. Texas is their offense very explosive. Oklahoma State's defense has a horrible bugaboo allowing the explosive plays. Oklahoma State's defense 66th SP plus, so basically perfectly average in the FBS, but 132nd in marginal explosiveness. They get lit up for big plays worse than anyone in the nation. And Texas's offense can derive them both from the run. CJ Baxter, who's fine. Sarkisian said after the game that they pulled on precautionary reasons in the last one. They did the same thing with Xavier Worthy. Those guys are fine. They're going to play. CJ Baxter is going to go off in this game. OSU's run defense, 110th in rushing explosion. Texas's run offense is 16th in explosion. Quinn Ewers is going to be ripping it downfield the whole time. I think this one is a Texas smash spot. We haven't even mentioned this is the early kick. Texas doesn't know the result of the ACC title game. They don't know the result of the SEC title game while this one's going. Their mission coming out here with this noon kickoff is just absolutely destroy Oklahoma State, make the best argument that we can to the committee for if it gets there. But again, they're not going to know. So I think that's a benefit for Texas in this spot. Texas all the way, even at this number. Like I said, I got a 12.5 ticket. I would still play it at 14.5, at 15. My line on this game is Texas minus 16.9, Texas minus 17, basically. I will play that thing all the way up to 16.5. As long as the thing's under 17, I think there's still value on Texas. Mike, the last game we're going to talk about this segment, then we're going to move into some listener questions. So anyone, again, any prop questions in particular, because we're going to be hitting all the games or any exotic bets, type your question below. Mike and I are going to open the mailbag here in a second. But let's talk about the 3 p.m. Eastern kick, Mountain West Championship. Mike, we're going to move to Las Vegas in this one. Las Vegas hosting their second conference title game in 2 days. This one, Boise State in the market right now is laying 2.5 points. It's an interesting handicap and an interesting game. Boise State going to UNLV. Boise State resurgent here down the stretch, 1-3 straight. A lot of shakeup during that 3-game win streak. Their starter of their 1A, 1B quarterback platoon, Maddox Madsen, knocked out for the season. It allowed Talon Green to get his job back. Boise State fired Andy Avalos during that time where there was 2 games left. The interim coaches led them to 2 straight wins. They also, very importantly, Boise State got back Ashton Jeanty 2 games ago. So now it's Jeanty and Holani again. And Talon Green, if you can use his legs at all, between that, they have the great rushing attack. Going to UNLV here, Mike, the resurgent UNLV Rebels. Can UNLV, Barry Odom, Brennan Marion, the go-go offense and everything, can they ambush the old guard of the MWC in Boise State here? Boise State laying 2.5.
Yeah, they can. I'm more on the over here, but if you bet UNLV all season long, you've been a happy person, and I've been a very happy person. I thought this was a tremendous hire for UNLV. Barry Odom, did a great job at Missouri. Not a great job, a good job at Missouri. Kind of got screwed, pushed out a little bit too early. Very, very good coach. And Brennan Marion goes from, wide receiver coach at Pittsburgh with Jordan Addison to wide receiver coach at Texas. He takes a shot at him as offensive coordinator at UNLV, and the offense has been excellent as well. They're 10-2 this season against the spread, so they've been paying me pretty good. I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to take them here, especially if it's under a field goal line. But the over is probably the better play here. Boise State's 7 of their last 10 games have gone over. 5 of their last 6 on the road have gone over. UNLV, 4 of their last 6 games as an underdog have gone over. 7 of the last 10 games overall have gone over. All the data here speaks to UNLV because they cover the spread this season very, very well. But all the data for both teams speaks to the over here. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. So I'm taking the over. If you want to parlay it with UNLV, it's not a bad play, simply because they've paid you all season long if you're stuck with them.
I'm with you on that over, Mike. Over is the play here for sure. My system's got this thing at 67, and you've seen the market has pushed this up, up, up as we've gone. This morning, we're up to 60 and a half on this game. But again, my system would suggest it still hasn't gone far enough. And I do think that there's value there. On the side, I'm right around where this line is. 2.5. I guess I got up Boise State minus 3.5 after adjustments, but I can't take Boise State. I can't lay it with Boise State, especially this game being in UNLV, one of the biggest games in program history for UNLV. It's not an exaggeration. The Rebels, if you take away the championship, because they won one or two where the NCAA took it away because of illegal, they were playing ineligible players back in the 80s. The UNLV actually only has one conference championship that the NCAA would consider legitimate. That was 1994. And now you get Boise State, again, the old guard. Boise State been down this year, but to the UNLV fan base, they are the bully. So, I mean, this could be a game where you get sort of the supercharged home crowd. Credit to UNLV. And Mike, you were mentioning the coaching staff. UNLV had a preseason win total of 5.5. I go over all the teams, and do the homework, the rosters, everything like that. I respect Odom and Brennan Marion. When I went over this one, I took the under on UNLV, and it had nothing to do with Odom or Marion. It was because the roster stunk. Well, what's the mark of a good coach? You go into a bad situation and you make lemonade, or you turn it into gold or whatever. And that's what they've done. Brendan Marion, every time he has called an offense, his entire career, you go back to the FCS, they have lit up scoreboards. He invented an offense himself, the go-go offense, and it has principles of the triple option in there, the flex bone. It has spread principles. It has principles of the rich rod offense. It has a lot of RPO concepts in there. And then, as the name indicates, go, they sprint back to the line every single time. And it's go, go, go. That offense is going to put a ton of stress on Boise State's defense, a Boise State defense that really got Andy Avalos fired. Andy Avalos was butting heads with a lot of guys on offense. It's the reason that Eric McAllister transferred. It's the reason you've heard rumors about the other key guys transferring, which, by the way, could happen immediately after this game. We'll find out. But the defense really regressed sort of quietly. Boise State, 132nd in the nation in tackling rate. They miss tackles all the time. Well, UNLV's offense, again, sprint back to the line, get the ball in space, force you to tackle them one-on-one. Boise State, the metrics would say, is the second worst team in the nation in tackling in space. UNLV's offense, top 25 rushing yards per game, top 20 in adjusted pace, like I'm mentioning. So it's just the go, go, go. Boise State's defense is good at havoc rate, but UNLV's offense is going to erase that in this game because of the way that they play, getting the ball into space very quickly, whether it's a run concept, whether it's a pass concept. Defenses aren't able to get the pass rush to the quarterback. That's why UNLV's number 21 in havoc rate allowed on the other side. BSU's defense also gives up a bunch of explosive plays, particularly through the air. UNLV has been a pretty efficient passing offense this year, but it's hard for me to totally fade Boise State because Talon Green's back, Gene T's back. They've been playing way better under the interim coach. The classic dead cap bounce after you get rid of the head coach that you hate. Because of that, it's hard for me to do a referendum on the side. I think the line's fair. The value in this one is on the over. Boise State can't tackle a team that is going to run 100 plays and get the ball into space. And Boise State, they have an absolute path to scoring as well. Boise State has a top 10 efficient running attack in the entire nation. And when you load up to try to stop that, they're awesome at hitting the deep shots. Boise State is number 7 in passing explosion. UNLV gets lit up through the air deep, 124th passing explosion allowed. So if Talon Green can be accurate on those deep shots off play action, they're going to score the quick points as well. Over, Mike, you and I totally agree on that one. Guys, before we move on to your questions and open the mailbag for the first time, I want to encourage everyone who is not, and hopefully most of you in here have, downloaded the free Betting Pros app for iOS and Android. We love the app. It's super simple to use, and you get a whole bunch of stats on yourself, other bettors, different stuff like that. You can track your picks, get customized analytics, and line movement alerts are very helpful, especially in some games like this where you're waiting on a number. There's a couple numbers I was waiting on this week, so I set those notifications, see if I could get there. Unfortunately, on a couple, we never got the Washington 10.5 that we were looking for, but you can also get the experts picks as soon as we lock them in by turning on those notifications as well. Download the Betting Pros app in iTunes or Google Play stores today. Only 2 other favors to ask you guys before we open that mailbag. Please hit the thumbs up button beneath us. It helps us with the algorithm for reasons Mike and I couldn't explain to you or don't understand, but we do know that. So please hit that thumbs up and please hit subscribe. You'll be notified when we go live, do stuff like this. It'll also let you type in questions. Speaking of that, Mike Farrell, let's dive into the mailbag for the first time today. We got our friend Mike Huseman. Mike, he asks us, do you like the prop of a half an interception for Big Deke Energy, Deacon Hill, today in Iowa against Michigan?
Yeah. I mean, it should be 1.5. So take the over. I mean, he's going to throw. How many? Well, you're the Iowa guy. I mean, we're going to get to this game later, too, but you're the Iowa guy. How many picks is he going to throw? Will they allow him to throw more than 10 times is the big question, but he's going to at least throw 1.
That is the question. Yeah, I mean, because Iowa does not put him, well, I shouldn't say, I mean, Deacon puts them in bad situations. They try to scheme around him as much as they possibly can. Deacon Hill, let's be very clear about this. At this time, he is not an FBS caliber quarterback. He's an FCS one, and they got to trot him out against this Michigan defense. That could be a tough scene. Since the Minnesota game, so you go back, this is October 21st. That Iowa should have won, but I'm not going to get into that right now. Since then, Iowa's played 5 games: Minnesota, Northwestern, Rutgers, Illinois, Nebraska. 5 games. Deacon has thrown an interception in 4 of them. 4 of the 5 games. The only one he did not was the Illinois game. Yeah, I think I would have to go over on that one. His passing yard one is really interesting. The book set that extremely low, but yeah, I'm going to take the over on the half an interception. Deacon Hill's passing yard total is currently 104.5. Mike, what would you do on that one, just out of curiosity?
I'd go under. See, the only question I have is if they fall behind a lot.
Well, they have to let them rip it.
They don't, though. I mean, so this is the funny thing about Kirk Ferentz is like he could play to keep this somewhat close and not be embarrassed. I mean, he doesn't remember the what was it, 2014 Cardell Jones 59-0 against Wisconsin or whatever. It's like that's an embarrassment you live with forever. They fall down 20 points. Is he going to start slinging the ball around with a horrible quarterback and lose 52-0? I don't think he will. I think he's going to remain conservative the whole game.
Yeah, Deacon's passing yards. Now we'll go back to late September. I think his first start was Michigan State. 115, 110, 37. But that was the Wisconsin game where they won 15-6. Wisconsin couldn't do anything, so they only 10 to 14 passes. But 37, 116, 65, 223 against Rutgers is by far his best game of the year. Or I suppose maybe Illinois from an efficiency standpoint. He had 167 against Illinois without the interception, like I said, and 94 against Nebraska. Deacon Hill in that game against Nebraska, Mike, was 11 for 28 for 94 yards, 0 touchdowns, and an interception that set up circuitously the game-winning field goal when Nebraska threw their own interception. So maybe that was a good interception to throw from Deacon. But moving to appreciate the question, Mike. Our next question comes from, this one might be for Mike again. Asking us Washington plus 700 to win the championship. What do you guys think? That's an interesting one, Mike. Plus 700. First of all, who do you expect Washington to be paired up with in the first round, Mike? And do you think there's any value on plus 700 now that we know they're going to be in the 14 field?
Nah, I mean, the team I saw last night's not going to win the national championship. They're good, but they're not going to be able to hang with Michigan or Georgia, just from a physical aspect. I know they played more physical than Oregon, which was a surprise. And Oregon, I thought, was a more physical team than we saw last night, but they're not going to be able to hang there. I think they're probably going to get in as the 3 seed. I just don't know who's going to be number 2. Likely Michigan. So you assume Georgia beats Alabama. And then you got Michigan beating Iowa. Michigan number 2, 2-3 against Washington. I'm not doing plus 700 on Washington.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Yeah, as much as I like this story, you could talk yourself into a shot for a puncher's chance at one upset. I think for sure. I mean, like, Mike, I think didn't you evoke TCU earlier? The TCU Michigan, or is I?
Yeah, we were off air. We were talking about that. It's like
That's right.
Florida State thing, and everybody says Florida State shouldn't get in because they're going to get blown out. I think they'll count themselves okay. And a lot of people didn't think TCU would win a game in the playoff last year, and they beat Michigan. Then they got drilled by Georgia, and everybody said TCU didn't belong, but they got to the championship game. So
correct.
I mentioned TCU.
And you could see that here. I mean, that's what I could potentially. I'm not saying I think that, but like if Washington has success in the playoff, I think it could be ambushing one of those teams. I don't know that it would be Georgia. Georgia's able to just erase your explosive plays. We're going to talk about that in a second. That could make it a difficult matchup for Washington. Could they ambush a team like Michigan? Could lightning strike twice?
I'm going to tell you why.
I don't think so, but it happened last year.
Harbaugh has to learn from the game planning situation. Washington is not very big up front. What he should have done is what Georgia did to TCU last year, is just run the football. That stupid defense they've got, TCU, where they're relying on undersized defensive linemen and linebackers who aren't super fast to run the lanes and make the plays. He just didn't overwhelm them. And then Georgia comes out, just runs the ball down their throat, kills them. And you're thinking, is Harbaugh dumb? Like, why didn't he do the same thing with his big physical offensive line, his 2 running backs, his power offense? He's not going to make that mistake again. If Washington plays Michigan, Michigan is going to pound the ball at them, wear them down, and that's why I don't think they have a shot. And again, if you mentioned Georgia, like Georgia wins, they're number 1. They'd lose. I mean, how do you keep Georgia in there? Like, so you keep Georgia in the playoff over Alabama. You stuff Alabama in there with Georgia. It's just, so Georgia's either going to be number 1 or maybe out, and Michigan's going to be number 2 clearly unless Iowa pulls something. So I think it's Michigan versus Washington, and I just don't think they're going to win that football game.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I was looking for the line I had on that one. So before adjustments, like based on my power rankings from last week, my current bowl projections, I have Michigan and Washington in the Rose Bowl in that one. My line on that would be Michigan -10, just to start out, before we do adjustments, stuff like that. They're going to be a double-digit favorite. The market would probably have it a little bit above that. I would guess it would drop probably 11.5, 12 range. Maybe 12.5, somewhere in there. Be kind of drop like the Texas Oklahoma State line did, and we'd see from there. But yeah, maybe one game, but parlaying the 2, I don't think so. You probably get better odds too in the if you just parlayed the 2 money lines of the 2 games they were playing. Mr. Sparkle asks us, do we like Blake Corum +2 touchdowns? Let me see what the line would be that we would get on 2. I got it up, but Mike, do you have any thoughts as I pulled up the odds on 2?
What was it last week? Somebody asked a question about that. It wasn't Blake Corum, but it was somebody as a 1.5 touchdown, and I'm like, and the odds were horrible. It depends on what you're getting.
So I got it up here. So Mike, 1 touchdown is -501
for
Corum.
+140. That's not enough for me, right?
Yeah. Well, so you're seeing 140 on the 2?
Kings, I'm seeing 2 or more touchdowns. Blake Corum 140. What do you get?
Okay, I'm getting 126. So somewhere in that range. What do you got for 3? I got +600.
3, man. I mean, you gotta be kidding me. It's +360. So you're getting. Okay. I wouldn't do 3. I wouldn't do 2. I mean, yeah, they're gonna score. They're gonna run the ball to score most likely. But Donovan Edwards exists, and there could be running backs and mop-up duty here. So I just don't trust that.
Yeah, Blake Corum in 12 games this year, 22 touchdowns. Shout out to Mr. Corum. I had his over touchdowns in the season-long prize picks. They cashed a long time ago. So we appreciate the no sweat on that for Mr. Corum. Corum's only had 11 catches, 72 yards, 0 touchdowns this year. It's all the utility on the ground. And they give him the ball around the goal line all the time. That's why he has the 22 touchdowns. Not a super explosive runner, but I mean, he's going to grind it out there. Corum has a touchdown in every game this year, a rushing touchdown in all 12. The last 4 games, so ever since the calendar turned to November, here's Blake Corum's games in terms of touchdowns. Purdue, he had 3 touchdowns. Even though he only had 15 carries for 44 yards in that game, he still got it over the goal line 3 times. Penn State, 26 carries, 145 yards, 2 touchdowns. Maryland, 28 carries, 94 yards, 2 touchdowns. Ohio State, 22 carries, 88 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think I would give a thumbs up on the 2 touchdowns, assuming you don't have to pay too much juice. I couldn't get above that, but like if it was the 126 number I'm looking at, I'd be okay with that. I think there's bets that have better value on the board, but if Michigan gets around, they're going to score 3-4 touchdowns at least. And Blake Corum is a guy who's the heavy favorite to score every one that they do when they're in the normal game script. Just is what it is.
Just not enough for me, though. I mean, one
It's
plus
not great odds. I agree.
140 is not enough for me for 2 touchdowns.
I agree. Appreciate the question, Mr. Sparkle. Let's see. Young Walt says, would you take Jacob DeJesus over receiving? I saw that line a couple of days ago. Let me see what we got on it. So right now that is 28.5 for DeJesus today against Boise State. I mentioned Boise State's issues tackling, and they have the bugaboo on the pass defense as well. UNLV's offense, it's way run skewed, as we know, but they also pass effectively when they do off of that. What do you think about that number for DeJesus, Mike, at 28.5?
It's not a bad one. It's, they spread the ball out, and there's a lot of props in that particular game for receiving that are low props because the ball is going to be spread around. But I don't have a problem with that one. I mean, he's fast enough, with the tackling issues you mentioned. I mean, he could break one tackle and bust off a 20-yard, reception pretty quickly. So I wouldn't guarantee it, but I don't mind the over on that one.
I got to give a shout out to my buddy, Mike Bainbridge, who college fantasy football OG. He also just won my 50-team league, but his site puts out projections for games. It's always interesting to look where they're at with it. For DeJesus, they had 4 catches for 36 yards. So they would lean it slightly over. You look at DeJesus's game log, past 3 games in November here: Wyoming, Air Force, San Jose State. Decent competition. Wyoming, 4 catches, 37 yards. Air Force, 2 for 33. San Jose State, he got the targets, but 5 catches for 30 yards. You're right around there. It's a fair line. I would lean over on that one though. Like I said, I see that one going over. You have the ridiculous tempo on the UNLV side, and when they put the ball in the air, they can have success. Boise State's not good at defending it. That seems like a fair line and one where we got a little bit of value going there. Before that, by the way, I mean, so DeJesus, the last 4 games, it's been 30 or more. 2 of them he had exactly 30, but and then the game before that was Colorado State, 9 catches for 120 yards. So, I mean, you go back the last 5 games, he's been clearing that every time. Some of them a little bit closer, but yeah, I think there's decent value. That's a nice spot by you, Mr. Young Walt. Mr. Sparkle asks us, Bowers receiving over under 58.5. Mike, this is an interesting one. We'll talk about this, the game as a whole more here in a second. But Bowers was withheld from the Georgia Tech game. Seems like from the coaching comments afterwards, it was just precautionary, get them ready for this one because they knew they were going to win that one. But with this number being set at 58.5 against a very, very good Alabama defense, one of the best that Saban's had in years there, and particularly a really, really good pass defense at Alabama's. What do you think of the 58.5 number? That's interesting.
I'm going under. It's not because he's, not healthy, and he's not because he's not talented. I just think he's going to be utilized in many different ways. And I also think he's going to be sort of a guy that takes attention away from some other players. So I would go under there. Am I back?
Yeah, I got you.
So
We had a
when
technical difference. Yeah, go ahead. I got you.
I get a phone call, it's just annoying. Like, and I get phone calls all the time. So, anyways, that could be breaking news. I don't even know what's going on, but yeah.
Give
So I'm
Jacob
going.
de Jesus. Just
It
kidding.
was more important than that. But I mean, come on, guys. I got a show what I'm doing here. Stop calling me.
Yeah.
Text message is the way to live. I mean, who calls people anymore? So, anyways, I'll say under on that one because I think he's not a decoy, so to speak, but I think he's going to be obviously bracketed quite a bit. They're going to pay a lot of attention to him, on and on. So, I would go under on that one.
Yeah, I'm looking just for any other. Yeah, I mean the only new updates on Bowers is that he's probable. Uh, Georgia is Bowers going to play. They brought him back for a reason earlier on, proved his health, and then it was like we're going to beat Georgia Tech, so we can give you this week off. But he's going to play with that ankle injury. Lad McConkey and Rara Thomas are officially questionable for today. From what I was seeing, I think at least McConkey goes. I would expect Thomas to as well. A lot of those guys were withheld for precautionary reasons, but as far as the 58 and a half, uh, it's hard to know without being inside the building how healthy Bowers is. Like I said, I tend to believe he'd be healthy. Why else would you have brought him back on the timeline you did? And it makes sense to sit him before this week. This is the kind of high leverage spot where they always get Bowers the ball, right? Like the games where Bowers disappears, it's like the ones where they're playing the crappy competition. Like every game script or game plan that Georgia has, it's tailored to the situation, to the opponent. This feels like a game where they funnel a lot of usage at him, but then again, don't know quite how healthy he is. But I would sight unseen with that. I would lean the over. I would go the other way with that just because we've seen in the past a little bit with the usage. Jonathan Sharf says Blake Corum needs 3 touchdowns for the record. Oh, interesting. Okay. I didn't know that. Closing in.
That's an element. He could do that. It's like I said. It's not that he's not going to. It's just that you're not getting enough reward for the risk.
Yeah, appreciate that context, Mr. Sharf. Michael Williams says, "Any thoughts on the FCS games today?" I have, I have some lines um, that I can pull up here in a second. I gotta find my sheet with the FCS ones, but
I have,
I will have a couple thoughts.
I have no thoughts. None.
No thoughts on the FCS ones. Let
Can't
me,
gamble on.
Mike.
I start on
Mike,
FCS.
you want to read the next question, Mike? I'm finding my FCS lines.
Okay, so here's a good best national championship future bet. This is from Joe Patotsky. Texas plus 950, Washington 700, or Alabama plus 1100. So of those, I think Washington plus 700 is the best of those three because I don't think Texas is going to get in no matter what they do, barring upsets. And Alabama has to win to get in, so that's a difficult future because Georgia's obviously a pretty good football team. And even if Alabama wins, who knows? I mean, not the SEC is going to get shut out. I think that's impossible. But let's see. Alabama beats Georgia, Michigan wins, Washington won, Florida State wins. Like, what do you do? And then you got Texas wins, and they got a head-to-head victory over Alabama. What do you do? So the committee's obviously a bunch of idiots. I mean, the explanations of what they did last week in the rankings, talking about this, that, and the other, and Bo Nix's completion percentage and all that stuff. I mean, Book Oregon and that group just don't know football, and I don't trust them. So I would say Washington plus 700, which I don't like. But of those three, Texas, Alabama, and Washington, I would take Washington.
Yeah, at those numbers, I would go. I would go. I wouldn't do Alabama. Alabama. Well, not that they need chaos. They beat Georgia. They're in. I guess I just don't think they're going to beat Georgia. So I couldn't do them. For me, is Texas really
So
behind?
say they're
I suppose
in.
because Washington's in, but
Well, so let me pose this question to you.
I
Texas
like
wins.
Texas a lot more at that price.
Texas wins and Alabama wins. Texas is 7. Alabama is 8. Alabama will have beaten the number 1 team in the country. I get it. And Texas is beating own. I got to put my phone on privacy. You talk. Let me put this on privacy.
Okay. Yeah. So Washington, I guess the number lower because they're in the field right now. Texas needs some help, whatever. But Texas actually has a shot to win the title if they get there. They have the trump card at their defensive line. They shut, like I was mentioning during when we were talking about the Oklahoma State game, shut down any opposing running game. And then they can generate explosive plays on offense in a multitude of ways. Washington, like we were talking before, I respect Washington, respect what they've done. It wouldn't be the most stunning thing in the world if they pulled one upset. I would be floored if Washington was able to do it twice. They're too flawed of a team. Texas has the multiple paths to the win. I would go with Texas in this one. They also have the much clearer path to the playoff than Alabama because they beat Alabama, even in a scenario both those teams win. So I'd go with Texas out of those.
Do you think Alabama leapfrogs Texas, even though Texas has a win head-to-head against them in Tuscaloosa? So let's say Alabama beats Georgia. That's a win over the number one team in the country. I think it moved from 8 up in. Texas beats Oklahoma State. Alabama gets in. Texas doesn't, even though Texas beat them in Tuscaloosa. So I think we got a lot of questions here. The best thing on earth would be if Alabama beats Georgia, Georgia drops to 4, and Alabama doesn't get in. The world would explode. The SEC football world would it would be so amazing to happen. But this is the thing. They put themselves in this position, the committee, because they're not smart. They put themselves in this position. Like Alabama would have to leapfrog a Texas team that they lost to, and everybody's going to say, "Yeah, it was September." I don't care. Why play the games if they don't count? That would pretty much say the regular season means absolutely nothing. So that's what's interesting to me. That's why I would say Washington's your best bet there, because I don't think Alabama is a lock to get in. And that's my concern.
Yeah, I lean Texas, like I said, because I think they get in above Bama, but we got to hope that Louisville wins outright, which we'll get to in 1 second here. The following up, so Mr. Williams on the FCS games, I'll get to those at the end. I'll hit a couple of those. I'm having difficulty pulling my stuff up, but we'll get to those at the very end. Young Walt says, "Is Jaden Maeva over a good play?" I assume he's talking about his passing because I think we got lines on both.
239. I've got on DraftKings 239.5. I would go over.
Okay, I'm so on Prize Picks. It's 243.5 for the passing. You would go over, Mike?
I would.
Rushing's 25.5 for Maeva. Yeah, I think I'm on the overs there. I'm on the overs for the game, and that one the passing yard one comes down to can Boise return fire? Like in a thing like that, or is Boise gonna they're gonna be the team that controls it, and then UNLV has to throw more. I think either way, there's the path there for Maeva. It's an underrated passing attack just because they do lean so heavily into the run game. But when they do the RPOs, the play actions, whatever, they have a lot of success with that. And this is not a good pass defense. So you're going to get less bites at the apple on it, but the yards per attempt are going to be there. I will go over on that one. Mr. Sparkle says Tulane game over. We'll get to the Tulane game here in 1 second. I would lean under on that total, though. It's 47, but spoiler alert, I would lean under. We'll talk about that in a second. Robert Moore says, you guys think Jack Plummer will go over 220.5 passing yards and Jamari Thrash over 56.5 against FSU? What do you think about that one, Mike?
I would lean towards Thrash, but not towards Plummer. Not that he's, one feeds into the other, but I think, to beat this Florida State defense, Plummer, I think he's going to be under some duress. I think they're going to try to go through with a short passing game. I think Thrash is the type of guy that can hit near the line of scrimmage, get some yak. So I would go over 56.5 for Thrash, but I don't think Plummer's going to have a big game.
Yeah, I lean the under on Plummer, even though I really like Louisville in the game, which again we'll talk about in 1 second, break down the full game. But as far as the Plummer one, a part of the reason is because of the way that I see the game playing out. I think both these Florida State has to skew super conservative. And I think for Louisville, not that the play calling will be conservative. We've seen Jeff Brom in big spots over and over again in his career. that guy, he's sort of like uh, uh, Auburn's coach Hugh Freeze, where in the big games he's like in the lab all weekend or all week, and then when he comes out for the game, you see some of these wild trick plays, and they have it's a different kind of strategy than the games leading up to it, and different stuff like that, trying to ambush the heavily favored opponent. We're going to get some of that stuff, but in terms of the pace for Louisville, Brahms teams never play fast. I think they're gonna skew conservative with that. And the times where they take chances down the field, it's all going to be. I mean, Braum is going to drill this into Plummer of only when we have the look one on one, we cannot turn the ball over. This Florida State offense is not going to be able to move the ball on our defense. We cannot give them short fields. And I think because of that, you'll see less aggression as far as like throwing downfield and stuff like that on the regular concepts. I realize Plummer 242 against Kentucky, 308 Miami, 243 against Virginia. A couple games before that, he was held under 150 both times. Actually, 3 of the 4 before that, he had 350 against Pitt. But yeah, sort of trending, in a conservative route anyway. And this is a good Florida State pass defense with a good pass rush. How often do you want him back there, especially when you can use Jordan and Garendo to try to control that and keep control of the clock? The Thrash one is interesting. Beginning of the season, they were throwing at him a whole bunch, all the way through, late October, really, 7 catches, 3 catches, 4, 5, 3, 8, 9, 7. So the 7, 9, 8, those were the 3 last game, or the 3 games in October. I'm sorry. Every one of those games, all 3 of them, 73 yards or more per game as well. But the games in November so far, Thrash got banged up then. I think it was in the Duke game. And then he's been trying to play through it admirably, but 3 catches for 22 yards against Virginia, the first game that they played in November. 1 catch for 7 yards against Miami. That game he was particularly banged up trying to gut it out. Last week, he did have 6 catches for 60 against Kentucky, but it just hasn't been trending as well for Thrash. So I'm definitely under on Plummer. Thrash is more or less a fair number, but I think I would lean under on that too, just because of the recent history. Christian Lopez says Georgia's now 4.5 on my book. I'm sorry, Georgia's down to 4.5 on his book right now. Thoughts? Get to that one in just 1 second, Christian. Robert Moore said, which Boise running back is going to have a better game? Jeanty at 77.5 or Holani at 73.5? That's an interesting question, Mike. Who would you prefer out of those 2 props?
I prefer Ginty. I think they're going to be able to run the football. I think he's the guy that, they're going to lean on a little bit more. Holani obviously came in the season with a lot more hype, and he's a very, very good running back. Those numbers are extremely close. I wouldn't touch either of them, honestly. I'm not taking a prop in the rushing over for either running back. But if you had to make me pick, I'd pick Ginty.
Yeah, I would go Ginty too. Yeah, ever since Ginty, it's like when you talk about the resurgence of Boise State these last couple of weeks, it's like the firing of Avalos, the interim coach, or Talon Green being back. Really, it's Ginty being back, right? I mean, when Ginty's out, not quite as dynamic. And then Holani can wear it down as well. Holani's not quite as good as Ginty is. Not as well-rounded either. Ginty, I am so high on that guy for the NFL. I don't think he's going to, he's not like a Saquon prospect or someone. He's not the crazy athlete, but he's built exactly how you want to be built. He's built like the bowling ball guy, gets downhill really quickly, very good in the running concepts, but he's also a very skilled receiver, and he breaks tackles. So I'm a big fan of Ginty. He is going to be at a Power 5 school somewhere here next season, and we'll see when he announces his decision. But he is going to have a very interesting week next week because Mr. Ginty is probably going to be making his final call. Probably going to be looking through a lot of NIL offers, very lucrative ones. So I would lean Ginty on that. Thanks for the question, Robert. Mr. Sparkle said, need some locks today for Mike and the Hammer. We will get to that at the end of the show. And hopefully we have enough time. I can hit on some of the FCS games as well. But Mike, let's get back into the card here. Appalachian State is taking on Troy today, traveling to Troy, Alabama, in a Sun Belt championship game where we have some interesting line movement on this one. This one's been dropping. There's a couple of these games where it's like stayed at a number for several days during the week, but now as we gotten closer to kickoff, this one started to drop. I think now live it's Troy -5. But that one is another, the was it Robert asked us about Georgia was down to 4.5. I'm seeing the 4.5s too with Troy right now that's holding steady at 5. But Mike, in that one between Troy and Appalachian State, who do you like in the Sun Belt Championship?
So I got it at 5.5 on DraftKings. So it's fluctuating. I still like Troy. But, I also like the over. Troy's been another team, I think, that's been consistently solid against the spread for teams or for bettors. But this kind of speaks to me more of an over game. In 6 of the last games these teams have played, it's gone over. They tend to play a little bit more aggressively against each other. I don't trust App State. I think they're a little bit up and down. I think they're, not as solid as Troy. I think Troy's a better football team, better coached football team, more steady. If you want to rely on somebody in this game, I would rely on Troy. I would lean over, though. I think it's going to be a higher scoring game.
Yeah, so Nate Noel, Appalachian State's running back, they're officially calling him questionable. I have not seen good news on Nate Noel this week so far. We'll see. They're labeling him a game time decision, but I would guess he doesn't play. This Kanye Roberts kid is going to take over for him. The real question for Appalachian State's offense is that Aguiar kid, is he going to keep playing well? He this guy takes super duper wild chances, and like tries to fit the ball. And he's kind of a wild man back there. Earlier this season, he was racking up turnover worthy plays on the PFF, but not getting the requisite amount of turnovers for them, right? Like it was flying way under. And it was just like everything was working out. In recent weeks, he's actually been playing a bit better, taking care of the ball better. I think it was Southern Miss and ODU were the two games that Aguiar really struggled in. Both those teams run man coverage. Troy does not very much. And I don't think they're going to change for this game. So that is one thing to look at, although Troy's defense is way better than theirs. It looks like that Aguiar kid done like the man coverage. Troy's offense is going to try to attack Appalachian State. By far the biggest team weakness is their run defense. Kamani Vidal for Troy, he's already run 254 times this year. He's got like the Ollie Gordon type workload, 1,349 yards. Vidal has had under 15 carries in only one game this season. He's had 23 or more in 7 of them. So they're just going to keep going at this Appy State run defense. Appy State's run defense, 95th success rate, 107th in explosion. I'm on all the Vidal overs. So it's more of a prop game for me. I have a slight lean to Troy on the side, but I don't love it. I don't love anything in this game. This is another one. My system on both the side and the total are right around there. So I didn't punch in like an official. I don't have a ticket on this one. If I had to bet it, I would take Troy. Mike, to one of the marquee games of the day, and this one's got a lot of intrigue. Is this a playoff play-in game? Certainly for Georgia it would be, as Alabama, and if they win, SEC championship game in Atlanta. Georgia down to, as we're talking live, is 5.5, 5 when we got on here live. Now it is down to 4.5. Maybe some sharks in the water waiting for this one to jump on Alabama late is what it's sort of looking like here. Down to 4.5, Mike, at that number. Do you prefer one of the sides here, or do you prefer a total sitting at 54.5, 55 right now in the market?
So Georgia's not very good against the spread, as I've learned horribly this season. Because their numbers are so inflated. This is not an inflated number. This is a legitimate, I don't know what your system says, but this is like right on point to me. I'm going to lean Georgia because they're a better football team. And I'm going to go opposite of a lot of people. And again, this has bit me in the ass every time I do it. And I don't know why I continue to do it. But maybe I'm still thinking of old school SEC football. Maybe I'm thinking of old SEC, LSU, Alabama games and all that other garbage. But I'm going to lean towards the under here. You've got two great defensive coaches who know each other extremely well, who want to establish physicality, who want to establish a physical run game, who want to win the battle in the trenches. And I guess maybe today's football, it's just not made that way anymore. But but I just leaning towards Saban versus Smart reeks to me of a lower scoring game. I'm not saying 10-3, and I'm not saying this is Iowa or Big Ten West. But I just think this is going to be a lower scoring game than people think. If I had to choose a side, I'm choosing Georgia. But I'm going with the under here.
So we have the same lean on the side. I do lean Georgia, but with betting against Mike, fading Alabama. It was a very lucrative proposition for me early in the season, and then it turned into this frustrating endeavor of Alabama. Even games where it felt like I capped it right, Alabama, the end pulling things out and whatnot. Yeah, so
how dare you?
Yeah. Don't bet against it. What is it? Once bitten, twice shy. Is sort of where I'm at with that one. My number, to your question about that is Georgia by 5.1 in this one. So I mean, you're in the dead zone there. I mean, even with it down to 4.5, there's really no difference between that and the 5. I do have the lean towards Georgia. My play on this game, though, is the over. So this is one of our few disagreements today, Mike, but I'm happy that we got one.
You're smart.
The
You're smart.
This game, yeah, go ahead.
I'm still thinking, Kirby versus Saban, old school. 9 of the last 11 games between these teams is gone over. I'm the idiot saying under. You're smart.
Yeah, and the ones they played recently, it's they sort of follow like a sort of script, right? Like it's like they're like Floyd Mayweather fights, where every time even when Floyd Mayweather's fighting a can in the first round, he just dances around the whole time. He just wants to like see like what's this guy's speed like? What's he like in front of me? Can he hit me? They're like, but Floyd Mayweather's more or less just screwing around in the first round, like trying to sort of calculate the math in his head of his opponent. That's what Alabama and Georgia play like. At least their last, 3-4 times these teams have locked up. And not every scenario was like this one, I should say. So, I mean, I saw some people talking during the week of like evoking a couple of the games in the past that I don't think have any correlation or any predictive value to this one. There was the one a couple of years ago where Alabama needed it badly and Georgia didn't need it at all. Georgia was going to make the playoff either way. And so, Alabama, they upset them or whatever. But like, again, Georgia didn't need that game and they went on to win the national title. They got it anyway. This one's a different proposition because Georgia can't feel the same way in this one. I don't think it's guaranteed that Georgia gets in if they lose this game. Some people even think that they would have much better odds of missing the playoff if they lose this game. The math starts to go against you a little bit. So Georgia has to try as much as they can to win this game. It's going to be a normal game script. Obviously, Alabama, it's the same thing. The teams, neither team is going to have a bunch of success running. I don't think. McClellan's questionable for Alabama. We'll have to see if he goes anyway. The Georgia run game's played a little bit down this year. Both run defense are really good. Reason I go over is I think the passing attacks, especially, once we get out of the feeling out period at the beginning of the thing, I think both passing games, or at least both quarterbacks, have a good level of success here. Alabama's pass defense, you can get them down the field. They're trying to keep you off schedule by mucking up the stuff where you're moving towards the chains and whatnot. But if you can protect your quarterback, which Georgia definitely can with Beck, you can open up opportunities to get them downfield. We've seen teams be able to exploit Alabama's defense down the field, probably their biggest weakness as a defense. Georgia can absolutely exploit that. It'll be interesting to see how Brock Bowers fits into that. The guy's question before. Bowers, the guy they use for the efficiency, short and intermediate. They also use him if he's fully healthy, the end around stuff, the shifting him into the backfield, the doing some really interesting stuff like that. So we'll probably know pretty early in this game whether he is or not. But I also think he's going to be the short stuff, the efficiency guy, but they're going to push it downfield to try to take advantage of that Alabama defensive weakness. Georgia going to take away Milroe's deep passing. I do think that it's really hard to get explosive passing plays on Georgia. They've only allowed a couple 40-plus yard passes all season. That's where a bulk of Jalen Milroe's utility and stats and success have come as a passer, is pushing it down the field. But Georgia's run defense is way down this year. It helps Georgia that McClellan's out, but I think Milroe, at least, that they're going to be sending him doing different stuff, using him as a de facto running back. Roydell Williams and those guys, they should have a decent amount of success. That's why I have this one over. My system has it 63.6. So even this number moving up to 55.5, I still think there's some value on the over. Mike, moving to last one we're going to talk about this segment, SMU and Tulane in the AAC title game. Very interesting one here, where the line opened up lower for Tulane, and then it shot up during the week with the news of Preston Stone's injury, the SMU starting quarterback. He's done for the year. It got up to 4.5 or even 5. Very interestingly, in the market, there's been buyback in the days since. This thing had dropped back to 4, then to 3.5 yesterday. We are down to 3 now, which is pretty surprising to me. Tulane laying 3 at home, mind you, in New Orleans against SMU's backup quarterback. Mike, who do you like in this game?
Yeah, it's a weird one. Neither of these two teams are great against the spread. SMU is a little bit better against the spread, but Preston Stone's not playing. Why is this line? So somebody knows something. I'm going Tulane. I like what Rhett Lashley's done with this football team. I love Willie Fritz as a coach. I think this is a good coaching matchup. I think this could gravitate towards a surprising over because I think both these teams can figure out ways to score on each other. But SMU is going to have more trouble scoring. Tulane's going to keep them in check. Tulane, just this reeks of somebody in Vegas knowing something that you and I don't, because this is an obvious pick to take Tulane.
Yeah, and that's become my only trepidation during the week. This was one of my, I think I locked in 3 bets on Sunday. Tulane minus 3.5 was one of them. It was sort of an interesting ride with that ticket where it was like, immediately up to 4.5 earlier in the week. And I expected it to keep going up. There's, like I said, there's been buyback in the market to bring it back down to 3, which is weird. I mean, usually you don't have the point of line value. And then all of a sudden it's like by kickoff, you wish that you had waited. I guess people in the market here are telling us, or at least, some of this movement, that there's a supposition with some in the market that Kevin Jennings maybe is not as big of a downgrade from Preston Stone as I think he is. We'll see on that. Kevin Jennings was a low 3-star recruit that didn't have another FBS offer coming out. Sam Houston. Yeah,
star recruit. Everybody's a low 3-star recruit now, Troy. I mean, Thor. Everybody is. Remember?
Arch Manning's not.
They just hand out 3 stars now. So it's hard to – but his other offer was Missouri State, and you had mentioned another offer, I think, earlier on the midweek pod. It's like we don't know. He's a runner.
We don't know.
He's a good athlete, but we don't know enough about him to, lay your hard-earned money on him. I'm not going to do it. But, I just wanted to throw in the 3-star thing because it's becoming ridiculous.
Yeah, but yeah, especially with where this line is now. Look, if Preston Stone was healthy, my line would have been totally the other way. I would have been on SMU because I think SMU full strength is a better team than Tulane. But you have to bake in the downgrade to Jennings. We're all pegging it, we're ballparking it, right? Like, I mean, we've only seen Jennings for 36 or 40 career attempts, mostly in garbage time against just awful teams. You can't extrapolate anything off of those stats. So it's like that, or, the recruiting pedigree, like what are we getting there? There is more of a mobility element to his game. But again, we'll see how it manifests. Tulane's run defense is awesome. I think that's an issue for SMU here. If they want to lean more into the running game, you would attack Tulane through the air. So SMU needs Jennings to have a really good game through the air. But again, it's sort of sight unseen with that. Tulane, their prerogative anyway, is to play good defense this season. And then have the scoring be lower. They've gotten more comfortable in those games without Tajay Spears, whatnot. Defense, Tulane's defense, give credit to them, been better than I thought it would be. They lost that stud linebacker in the last class, that kid with the long ropey arms that ran around, Dorian Williams, right? They lost a couple guys like that. They're, some top guys, and they have been even better on defense this year. We'll see how they can hold up today with a receiving core. It's probably going to be depreciated again, certainly without Lawrence Keys. Jaquan Jackson, they were calling him questionable. Brazel has stepped up recent weeks, but with this thing down to 3.5, whatever, I'm on Tulane. My number on this game is Tulane minus 3.7, so I play it up to 3.5. I do lean the under. My system got a total on this one of 45.5. Not a ton of value, on that side of it, but I would lean the under on it. Uh, Mike, we'll tell the people, we'll give the people a quick message, and then let's talk about the late night ones, and then we'll get to the rest of our card, or I'm sorry, the rest of our questions. We'll open the mailbox for a last time. But before we did, just want to mention you guys, if you want to win a premium 1 year subscription to Betting Bros, you can do it pretty easily right this second. Only 2 steps. Number one, subscribe to the YouTube Betting Bros channel right now. So that's the one of the buttons right beneath us. And number two, comment below on this video. Then that's it. We'll be announcing a winner on this channel, so turn on your notifications to find out if you're the winner. That easy. Mike, let's just bang out these last 2 games, then we'll get into we'll open the mailbag one more time at the end, get through the rest of the questions that we got. Anyone out there, you have any prop questions, anything like that, now's your chance to put them in there. We'll get to those here in 10, 15 minutes as we close out shop on the show today. But Mike, the ACC Championship, Charlotte, North Carolina today. Louisville on Sunday, opens at 4.5. This thing is all the way down. I got to check it live. This thing has been a rock in the lake, just sinking. So Florida State, the consensus line still is the favorite, but we are down to 1. Florida State -1. By kickoff, this thing could be pick 'em. Who knows? Maybe even Louisville will be laying the 1. It's been coming down all week. Obviously, you have the Florida State quarterback injuries concerns. Everybody knows about Jordan Travis. What cropped up here in the last 24 hours was Tate Rodemaker, head injury that he suffered last week. Was he suffered it, then he was out for a couple plays, then he finished the game out. But apparently that has made his status for this game up in the air, whatever. Mike, I'm curious how you see the quarterback situation for Florida State, whether it's Rodemaker or Glenn, the freshman. You're our resident recruiting expert, America's resident recruiting expert. Can you tell us anything about Glenn if we do see him? Do you think there's a difference? And overall in this game, who do you like in it? What side would you go?
I'm going to take Florida State because I think they're the better football team, the more consistent football team, even without their quarterback. Rodemaker is not impressive. I was never really impressed. He was a kid early in the process, was a 4-star kid, had early offers. Everybody, we downgraded him into the 3-star range just because every time we saw him over and over again, it just wasn't overly impressive. Arm strength was average. Accuracy was all over the place. He's been in that system for a long time. He has done nothing. Brock Glenn is an interesting prospect. He's okay. He's not great. He's a strong kid, stronger than he looks. He can throw on a run. He's a little bit more of a wild card than Rodemaker because he hasn't been in this offense very long. But I think it would be best for Florida State, honestly, if Rodemaker isn't cleared. And he's got the concussion protocol. I already threw on Wednesday and threw on Thursday, but he's a game time decision. I think it's going to be Rodemaker, but I would, if I'm a Florida State fan, I want to see Brock Glenn, and I want to just go out there and throw caution to the wind and wing it. I don't want to play a conservative game plan here. Louisville is a solid football team. They disappointed me last week against Kentucky. That was kind of weird. They're a year away for me. This was much ahead of schedule. Braum coming in is a perfect fit for Louisville. They've got NAL. They've got recruiting. He's the guy who lives and breathes Louisville football. He brought in, Plummer, who's okay, just for a comfort level. They've got a good defense, especially on the defensive in the defensive secondary. I really like their secondary quite a bit. All this being said, I'm still going to go towards the better football team, and that's Florida State. A lot of people are taking Louisville here. A lot of people really like this Louisville team to not only you win, but money line, all that stuff. I'm going to go the opposite. And this is kind of like, you remember when I thought, Clemson and Dabo, and they were kind of on the outs and people were questioning them, and he got all fired up, and they really had a strong finish to their season. I think Florida State is a team that's really, they didn't look good against Florida last week, but they're upset. They're upset because everybody wants them out of the playoffs. Nobody wants them in. Everybody's rooting against them because they think they're going to be watered down the playoff and they're wasting a spot. And they're going to use that energy, and I think they're going to come out pretty good. So I've got Florida State in this game covering. I don't know which quarterback's going to play, though. I would prefer Glenn just because I think he's got less to lose, and Rodemaker's in his head. He's thinking too much.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. So Louisville, and then the under as well. I got better tickets than we're at now, but I'd still advocate the play. I got Louisville 4.5 on Sunday, but most line value I'm gonna have on any game this week. Looks like, although Texas one could compete with it, the under as well, which now continues to crater since this Rodemaker news came out. We're down to, is it 40? Let me see where we are live. We got
I got 40.
46 and a half.
Yeah, I got 46 on mine.
Are you seeing? Yeah. Like I said, continues to, I think I got 51 and a half, and it was even a little bit higher than that, like on Sunday. But yeah, and we were mentioning this, or, I was talking about this when we were talking about the props, but Florida State has to go conservative, regardless of whether it's Tate Rodemaker less than 100%, or whether it's this Glenn kid, the true freshman, whatever in this spot. You have to play conservative. Yeah, I mean, it's a try to get the ball to Trey Benson, try to manufacture touches for the other guys. And then, on the Louisville side, again, you're going to see creative plays, but they're not going to take unnecessary chances. You can't, because you don't want to facilitate the scoring opportunities for Florida State in a game where you project them not to be able to score many points, get many yards. Last week against Florida, Tate Rodemaker playing most of that game, Mike, a Florida defense that we think is terrible. I mean, we were talking about Florida games most of the year this year. They had all kinds of issues everywhere on that defense. Late in the year, they were all kinds of banged up in November as well. And the Tate Rodemaker crew only got, what was it, 230 yards, 240 yards of total offense. They had 2 breakaway runs from Benson that accounted for most of that. All Rodemaker does is just try to force the ball to Johnny Wilson. We were talking about that earlier this week. Johnny Wilson's 6'8", and he has the catch radius of an Indian god. So Rodemaker just like toss it up to him. Rodemaker has never had success with Coleman in at least this season in the limited sample that we've seen. I think in the last game it was targeted him 5 or 6 times. Coleman only had 1 catch. Wilson was the guy he was having relative success with. If Rodemaker's going today, I'm for sure on the unders at Keon Coleman. They can't price it low enough, and I'm up for sure on the overs on Wilson. That would be the only over on a Florida State passing that I would do in the prop market today. I was on the under of Rodemaker's earlier this week. It might get canceled out if he doesn't end up playing. I would prefer the Beck kid or whatever.
Yeah, so a little bit about Brock Lynn too. This is what's funny.
Yeah, give us some context on that guy.
So Ohio State wanted him. He was an early offer, an early commitment to Ohio State. Now, Kyle McCord hasn't played that well this year, but Ryan Day's done pretty good with quarterbacks. So, that was the guy they wanted. They targeted him. He's from Tennessee, committed to Ohio State, highly ranked because of that, of course. Same thing with Aaron Nolan this year. It's like you commit to a certain school, they produce quarterbacks, your ranking goes up. Decommits from Ohio State, ends up going to Florida State, ranking drops precipitously. He's got talent. He's a talented football player. The question is he ready? But there is talent here. I would rather him go because I know what I'm getting in Rodemaker, and I knew what I was getting in Rodemaker out of high school. And so, not that I'm rooting for anybody to be injured and not be able to play, but if I'm Mike Norvell, I might say, listen, I know you had a concussion. We're going to be cautious with you, blah, blah, blah. We're going to start this kid. And I think, honestly, and this isn't a DJU situation at Clemson where DJU played all season long and you could tell there was no energy on that football team. Everybody knew the offense was going to suck. Clemson wasn't Clemson when DJU was in there. I get a sense a little bit since Jordan Travis got hurt that there's not a lot of faith in Rodemaker. And I think the freshman kid who's going to have a chip on his shoulder and is going to go out there and sling it might be the better bet for Florida State here. So, but that's just an example. This kid was targeted and wanted and committed to Ohio State. Ohio State does pretty good with quarterbacks, so he's got talent.
Yeah, sure do. And we'll see. The lack of experience tossing him in, that's tough in this scenario against a very good Louisville defense. Louisville defense is very good against the run as well. I think they get Brownlee back, the cornerback that Louisville has, their cornerback 1 as well. But you're not projecting much Florida State passing success in this game. Yeah, like I said, if Rodemaker's in, he's going to just be chucking it up to Wilson every time. That's what he does. But, regardless of the quarterback, I think Louisville, they can be able to carve out some stuff on the ground here between Jordan and Garendo. I think, again, I just don't see Florida State doing anything on offense. That's why I think the Louisville passing attack gets more conservative, to the point we were talking about before about the prop questions with Plummer and Thrash. For me, this is a low scoring game that Louisville more or less controls, and Louisville wins, to avoid our national nightmare of seeing Tate Rodemaker, the true freshman, in the playoff. So I'm going the under. The number where it is now, you have less value there, where it's dropped. I mean, it dropped even more when Rodemaker was, the questions with that 46.5. That one's tougher. But like I said, definitely still on Louisville for the side. You can still get around even money on the money line on that. So I go with that one. Mike, the last one we're going to talk today, and we can make our comments quick because I think this one is going to be painful for your boy. My graduate school, I'm an alum of Iowa. They are playing Michigan today in Indianapolis. Line on this one of 21.5. I saw last night it had dropped to 21 at some books, but I'm pretty sure market wide it's, as we get up today, 21.5. Mike, I have seen this one before. I mean, with Iowa, we see it quite a bit. What was it, October against Penn State? By far the best team Iowa played this year. I think they lost 31-0 in that game. I do not believe that Iowa had 100 yards of total offense. That's when Iowa had more guys on offense. They have since suffered even more season-ending injuries on that side of the ball. Now, Cooper DeJean, Iowa's best defender by far, their best special teams player by far, their best overall player by far, one of the best players in program history. He's out for the season. Can Iowa do anything in this game to attempt to keep this thing within 21 points? What do you think? Do they got a shot?
So I'm on the under here, and I know it's really a low number.
That one's at 35 in the market, right? Right now, live?
35.5.
35.5.
I'm seeing, but it's a really low number. And I know we talked about this on the midweek show. You think Michigan's going to absolutely destroy them, and I get that. I think Iowa's going to try to keep this close. I think they're going to try to play their disgusting brand of football on offense and try to milk the clock as possible. And I think their defense is good enough because Michigan's going to come out and run. They're going to run the ball. Harbaugh's back. He's going to be conservative on offense. He's not going to try to, make any mistakes. Because the only way Iowa has a prayer of winning this football game is if Michigan makes a couple big mistakes. So I think Michigan's going to come out and run the ball. I think Iowa's obviously going to come out and run the ball. I think you might see a low-scoring first half, and that's my hope. And then Michigan will probably win the game by 20 to 24 points in that range. I'm not taking the side because I'm not sure what it's going to be. And Iowa may score 3 points or 7 points, and I think that's where you get the under here. But I know what you're going to say. I just have been making so much money on the under. I mean, 11 of the 13 games that Iowa's played has come under. 11 of 13. It's just too much money for me to consistently win for me not to go under here. So I'm hoping this is like a Big Ten West game, and I'm going under.
Yeah, I mean, my only thing with it is just Michigan could get there by themselves. And I was talking about the Penn State one earlier this year. The other one of my nightmares this week was the Big Ten title game 2 years ago. These same two teams, Michigan, it was this same core. And we were talking about earlier, how, or maybe this was before the show, but how Michigan, they built for this moment, right? Like, and they have all these veterans and they're all studs and whatnot. 2 years ago, these guys were all young guys. They were young pups, Corum and Edwards and McCarthy, like all these different dudes. And they decked Iowa 41-3 in this game. This is going to be tough for Thor. I need to get out at some point today and buy some hard liquor. I think this one's going to be tough, Mike, for me to get through. I have to go Michigan in this one and lay it. I just seen this movie too many times. I think, Iowa's going to struggle to throw the ball. We mentioned we think Deacon Hill's going to turn the ball over when they got to go to the air, whatnot. I don't think Iowa's going to have much success running the ball as well. And then, at a certain point, it's just they're going to get overwhelmed by Michigan. I think if you're going to play the under in the first half, it probably would be the play, or maybe in the first quarter. The Iowa team total, interestingly enough, or humorously enough, there was a lot of talk about this among sharp bettors this week. The book set it at 0.5 point, Iowa team total in the first half. I might go under that one as well, but I'm going to lay it with Michigan. And I guess I would lean over because I think Michigan's going to win this one. Like, I hate to say 41-3. We've seen that movie before, but I'll say 38-7. We'll say it's an offensive explosion on both sides.
I'm hoping 31-0 would be fine because I can cash my under. Lee Corso, National Treasure, picked Iowa to win outright. So
that's amazing. Shout out to Lee Corso. Yeah, you're a legend, sir. Yeah,
he is a legend, and there's
from
a
your
funny
lips
video.
to God's ears, Mr. Corso.
Kirk always videos Lee before the show, College Game Day, and this one was funny. And Kirk's like, give me a surprise today, Coach, and he's like, Iowa. And he's like, oh. And he's like, he said something that made Herb Street believe that he felt he would cover. He's like, no, they're going to win outright. So you want to money line this, you're going to get yourself a nice plus 1,100.
Oh. Wow.
So
okay.
Money line.
I don't personally, but maybe Corso.
I don't think there's a chance in hell Iowa wins this game. My only hope that, if Michigan scores 30 and Iowa scores 3, then I come under,
So, yeah, Michigan for me, but just a lean. And like I said, that over under, I mean, both teams' prerogative, the game script, generally under. It's just, will Iowa just get overwhelmed by Michigan and Michigan put us up a tidal wave here and gets over themselves? I would lean that way. This one's a tougher game, though, for sure. Probably more of a prop game. Although, it becomes interesting there, too, because it's like, how much does Michigan win by? Are they going to be in their normal thing the entire game? We do like the over of Deacon Hill, the half of interception. I think, honestly, Deacon at 104.5 passing yards, as much as this is scary to say, I think I would lean the over on that because I was going to be getting throttled. They're going to have to throw at some point. I mean, it's not that I think Deacon's going to have success, but just by volume, you'd have to think he gets to 140 yards.
So all the props I looked at, I've got over in every prop in this game.
Yeah, Williams was set at a decent number. Williams could end up getting there on one carry 39. If he just breaks when he had 39.5. That one would come down a little bit. And I get it, but they're going to give him, he gets the touches every game. You can get 15 or more carries.
Every number is set low, like ridiculously low.
Speaking of numbers and being set low, Ollie Gordon's, his prop, I was on the under at that one earlier this week. I think it was, 105.5, like something like that, all the way down to 97.5, at least on Prize Picks right now. The, another one that I like the CJ Baxter over 92.5 going up against that bad run defense. But Ollie Gordon's is crashing as we get closer to kickoff here. Mike, we got a couple more questions in the mailbag to get to really quick before we get out of here. Robert Moore asks, hey guys, would you parlay Vidal over 110.5 yards plus a touchdown? I think I would. Yeah. Vidal has one of the best matchups, prop matchups of the day. Appalachian State's run defense is terrible. Troy gives the ball to Vidal all the time. And Troy's quarterback, Gunnar Watson, never leaves the pocket. So you have all the rushing usage funneled into one guy. I'm on the overs of Vidal. And yeah, if they get around the goal line, he's scoring as well. Mike, you have a thought on that one?
I would agree with the over on that too.
Mr. Sparkle says, dumb question, but how do I find you guys on Betting Pros app so I can tail picks in real time? There's like a search deal, and then you can type in my name. I think you can also do it through, if you go on the website, bettingpros.com/Thor, we'll get you to my profile, and then you can click the follow on that thing, get it onto your profile, and then on your phone, turn on the notifications, or anybody else that you want to follow. Thanks for the question. Mango says, how does the apparent move of Fritz to Houston, rumored to be announced tomorrow on today's game? Mike, do you have a thought on that? If the Willie Fritz rumors, if that affects Tulane at all?
No, I don't think so. I mean, maybe that's part of the reason why the line's odd, but I don't think it's going to affect the team.
I don't either. I think, we've seen in the past, sometimes it has. Willie Fritz last year could have gone to Georgia Tech. They literally had the contract offer for him that he could have signed, and he turned them down to come back. I don't think, this Tulane team where you have a lot of veterans, they've been to war with Willie Fritz over and over again. And a lot of those guys, I mean, Michael Pratt is going to the NFL after this year. He's already accepted his Senior Bowl invite, a lot of different stuff like that. I think the Tulane roster more or less understands. Willie Fritz, the reason the Georgia Tech thing fell apart last year around this time was Georgia Tech wanted an offer before the conference title game. Willie Fritz told him to stuff it, and that's how that whole thing got blown up. Obviously, Houston appears to be more amenable to that, but I don't know. I don't think it will affect it. Fritz cared so much about being in this game last year. He obviously does in this one as well. This isn't one where it was like Hugh Freeze at the end of last year at Liberty, where he just literally wasn't game planning. At 3 points, I'm still on Tulane. Mike Huseman asks us SMU prop Kevin Jennings over under 231 and a half passing yards. You have any
Under.
thought on that, Mike? Sight unseen with Jennings.
Under. I think he can run the ball, and that's going to cut into his passing yards.
I'm going to lean under on that one as well. Robert Moore says, will CJ Baxter hit his rushing prop over 92 and a half? I love the Baxter over today. I think Baxter gets over 100 yards. And if you have an alternate one where it's Baxter against Gordon, you get the juiced odds. I would take that with Baxter. I think there is a real decent shot. He finished with more yards today than Ollie Gordon, which little contrarian. But what do you think about that, Mike?
Yeah, no, I like the Baxter one too quite a bit.
Robert Moore says FanDuel has Tulane minus 3.5 at plus 100. Is this a trap? It looks so simple to take it. You can also get the minus threes right now if you like Tulane. I still like Tulane. Again, this Willie Fritz stuff, whatever. The bigger thing for me is the drop off from Preston Stone to Kevin Jennings. If Kevin Jennings can come out today and be a star, they can have my money. But sight unseen, I got to go with Tulane. Battle tested team. Been here before. They get them at home. Snook Slayer says thoughts on A&M firing Jimbo. Mike, 2 sentences on that one.
2 cents about time.
We
me to go into Jimbo. We're up against the clock, so about time. It's about time.
It's about time. Last one. Jason Ains says, what about JJ McCarthy over 149.5 pass yards with Colson Loveland over 19.5 receiving yards? I'd be good with that. I would take those. Iowa's pass defense, the metrics say it's the best in the nation, but that they don't have Cooper DeJean again. So I think those are set.
Those aren't real numbers. That's not his number. 149. I would take that in a second.
Yeah, I wonder if that was alternate.
Yeah, because that's
McCarthy 193.5 that I'm seeing. But yeah, I think I would go over on that one. Mike, let's move to our last segment of the day: Thor's hammer and Farrell's fade. Thor's hammer for me, I've talked about it at the top of the show. Texas, laying whatever with Texas. We'll go all the way up to 16.5 with Texas. I think Texas smashes today. They need to make this statement to the nation, to the College Football Playoff Committee. They get this one right away in what is a fabulous matchup for them against this Oklahoma State team that can only do one thing, and they have to go into the wood chipper of Texas's greatest team strength. And you have all these different things going on. Great situational spot. This Oklahoma State team is overinflated. Every metric says it. Texas drops the hammer today. Texas, my Thor's hammer. Mike, who is your Farrell's fade?
My fade is Oklahoma State, so we agree on this one. I would love to see them win and send Texas and Oklahoma out with losses. I would love to see Iowa beat Michigan today because I'm a contrarian. But these things aren't going to happen. So Oklahoma State, fade them. They're going to get into a situation where the line of scrimmage is going to be crowded. They're not going to be able to run. They're going to have to throw. They're going to make mistakes. Texas is going to blow them out.
Yeah, quickly wrapping up on the FCS thing. I had 4 of those games around to pick them. I had to circle back on the guy really quick. Albany, Richmond, Youngstown State, Villanova, Chattanooga, Furman, and North Dakota State and Montana State. My system had those as just about a pick them. I know a couple of those lines were closer to 7. So for whatever it's worth, Mercer and South Dakota State, I had 18.3, Prairie View and Florida A&M 16, and Delaware, Montana 12.6. So for whatever that's worth, we're running out of time. So I just had to get that in really quickly. Mike, any real quick, your favorite prop today before we let the people go?
Oh, geez, I had a ton of them. Like I said, every over in the Iowa-Michigan game because they are so low. Caleb Johnson, LaShawn Williams, Caleb Brown, even Deacon Hill passing yards, as you mentioned. I'm going over there. I can't say a Rodemaker. I would go under a few plays, but, game time decision, that's a difficult one to go with. I think Jalen Milroe is going to rush for over 39.5 yards. I think that's going to be part of the game plan there. I don't like his passing number, but I do like his rushing total over.
I like that one, Mike. The Milroe. Yeah, the passing one is tough just because, we had to see some of that stuff. Georgia does take away the deep passing. Georgia does not have a great pass rush. Alabama has the leaky offensive line. So sometimes with the Milrow rushing, you're wondering, are they going to get the negative yards subtracted like they do in college, whatever. But Georgia doesn't have a good pass rush. Georgia's going to be delineating their resources to taking away the deep passes. I think that allows Milrow to get over this number. They're also going to be leaning on him more heavily, I think, with McClellan out. So I do like that one. I think the Baxter over is my favorite one, 92.5. I also, like I said, I'm on the Ollie Gordon under. That thing has come crashing down. Now it's closer to in value play. The other one I like was the under on Penny Boone, 109.5. That one's come down a bit too. Miami has the best run defense in the G5. Super duper slow game script. I think Daquan Finn is going to be scrambling around a little bit more in this game. Maybe they try to throw to get away from Miami's run defense just a little bit more than usual. So I'm going to go the under on Penny Boone as well. Guys, that is all the time that we have for today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on our last Saturday live stream of the fall. Mike and I are going to be back throughout bowl season doing several bowl episodes, a bunch of podcasts we have sprinkled throughout, so check those out. Me, Froton, and I think Bogman next week are doing a Bowl Mania challenge, so check that one out as well on the podcast feed. But until then, for my co-host Mike Farrell, I am Thor Nystrom. Let's go out there and cash some tickets today.